I recently visited an active archaeological dig at the Western Wall. That's where Joe Uziel of the Israel Antiquities Authority revealed one of the most important new discoveries showing the true history of Jerusalem. Take a look.
Right now we're standing beneath Wilson's Arch, which is a huge stone-built arch which supported a bridge which led from the city into the Temple Mount in the Second Temple period. 2.5 years ago, the Israel Antiquities Authority, together with the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, began the excavations here. And in order to allow the excavations, they had to put in these metal poles behind me to support the synagogue, which is above our head. You hear those chairs dragging?
Yeah, you'll hear some noise up there from the synagogue above us.
That's right. Those are people who are praying now next to the Western Wall, which is right behind me.
The Western Wall.
That's it, right there.
By the way, kind of the big reveal right here, Joe. Wow, people are used to seeing the Western Wall, obviously, the visible outside portion of the Western Wall where people pray. But this also is a part of the Western Wall. And Joe, why is this so important and significant?
Well, the Western Wall where people pray today is actually just a small section which was exposed. This part of the Western Wall hadn't seen light for 1,700 years until we began exposing it. We weren't the first ones to excavate here. Charles Warren digs a small shaft right behind me. And at about this height, he digs another tunnel towards the south. He exposes a small building. We don't know much of what about this building because Warren's areas were very, very small and confined. What he does tell us is that bedrock is another about 7 meters down from where we're standing, and the Western Wall is built all the way down to bedrock. We thought we would find the Second Temple period street, which ran from the city of David, from the Siloam Pool, all the way up to the Temple Mount, and ran along the foot of the Temple Mount, along the foot of the Western Wall. And that's what we thought we would find here. But as often happens in archaeology, we found something completely different. I think if we go down into it, it may blow your mind.
Okay, should we take a walk down?
Yeah.
Joe, okay, lead the way.
Follow me. As I mentioned before, this excavation had a real surprise in store for us. We thought we were going to discover the Second Temple period street, which led from the Siloam Pool and the city of David up to the Temple Mount and ran alongside the foot of the Temple Mount where we're located right now. The street would have been about at eye level for us, and we didn't find the street. What we did find, which suggests that the street did pass here, is the drainage channel right beneath us right here, okay? Right here you have the drainage channel, which would be located beneath the street, and the shop openings on my right, which would have faced the street and would have had services that would have been provided to those walking along the street.
Gotcha, Joe. So the openings we see right there were shops in there.
That's right.
It was a thriving, bustling area when the Temple Mount, obviously the temple was right above us here. You see the Western Wall here. So this was a real thriving area. It was alive with people, alive with worshipers, I would think, going up to the Temple Mount.
Exactly, up until 70 CE. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, and much of this road is covered beneath collapse of the Temple Mount, of the buildings alongside the road. However, where we're located, remember, we have Wilson's Arch above our head. Wilson's Arch does not collapse, it stays standing. And so the area was clear. And because the area was clear, the Romans decided that this is a good spot to build one of their Roman buildings, which would be the beginning of the establishment of the Roman colony of Aelia Capitolina, what replaces Jerusalem.
Key point there, Joe. Now, Jerusalem is destroyed, and the Romans rename it. They rename Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina.
That's right. And what they do here is they remove the street, which would have been at this level. They dig down and they put in this circular building that you can see right here. This is the first theater or theater-like structure exposed in Jerusalem after 150 years of archaeological excavations. So if we thought we had excavated everything that could be found, this is a reminder there's always something new.
Yeah, Joe, this is a very exciting discovery, to say the least. And by the way, it's not a Roman amphitheater. Key point there, right? It's a Roman theater.
That's right.
Tell us about the distinction there.
An amphitheater is the full circle, okay? It would have shows like in the Colosseum. Here, this is a theater. A theater would have plays, it would have enactments. The stage area would be to my right over here, and the seats would be going up towards the western wall. There's another type of structure called an Odeon. An Odeon is like a theater, but it's smaller, and it has a roof. And the reason it has a roof is because it's used for acoustical performances. Imagine, you know, an MTV Unplugged performance of Lenny Kravitz singing to a small crowd and playing on his acoustic guitar. That kind of thing.
That kind of thing right here.
And that's what would be going on here.
Gotcha. It wasn't a large-scale thing like the Roman Colosseum or a large amphitheater, like you said, Joe. And you can see the two entrances here that you guys have uncovered here.
That's right.
Yeah.
The main
Coming
entrance from the north or the south, and you'd have an usher at the entrance, and you'd show him your ticket, and he'd send you up the right set of stairs in order to get to your seat, which would have been up there towards the wall.
With their backs to the western wall and the performer right around this area.
That's right.
Now, this did not go over too well, needless to say, among the Jewish people living in Jerusalem, I would think.
Well, historical sources, particularly Cassius Dio, mentions the fact that the reason for a second revolt, 60 years after the first revolt and after the destruction of Jerusalem, 60 years later, the Jews revolt again against the Romans.
The Bar Kokhba revolt.
The Bar Kokhba revolt. And the reason behind that revolt, according to Cassius Dio, is that the Romans are rebuilding Jerusalem. They're rebuilding Aelia Capitolina, what becomes Aelia Capitolina, and the Jews don't like it very much.
Joe, I can't imagine. Jerusalem is the holy city of the Jewish people, the ancient ancestral capital of Israel and the Jewish people. And for Rome to come in and essentially bulldoze the temple, rename Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina, I can't even imagine how irate the people of Israel were.
Now, an interesting point regarding this building is that we've discovered from various pieces of evidence, and I'll show you one in a minute, that the building was never complete.
Now, Joe, you said that this Roman theater was never actually finished, and here we have some evidence of that, how they stopped construction.
That's right. You can see the efforts taken to build this structure. Large stones carved very nicely, and here all of a sudden we have a set of steps leading up to this, leading up to the seats. And take a look here. They never finished carving the step. This is just one of the many indications. Now, to finish carving this step, it's like a couple of hours work.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
It seems like they stopped abruptly.
Exactly. They stop abruptly, and we're trying to think of what the reasons could be that they all of a sudden, one day they get up and they leave and they don't even come back to finish it off. There could be several reasons for this sudden, abrupt stop of building. We know in the Roman world there are cases of buildings that in the middle of construction, the money runs out and they stop building them. One interesting historical option that we're examining is that in the 2nd century CE or AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt erupts. And one of the reasons that we have historically is that the Romans rebuild Jerusalem, begin to rebuild the Jerusalem and putting in Roman structures like we have here. And so is it possible that the structure that we're looking at begins to be built in Jerusalem in the 2nd century AD, and then the Bar Kokhba revolt erupts, and they have to leave it unfinished in order to deal with the revolt?
I mean, yeah, because Joe, like you said, it looks like we can kind of shave this off and level it off ourselves right now. Not a long job, but the Bar Kokhba revolt, the years 132 to 135 AD or CE, as you mentioned, it was sparked by things like this, what the Romans were doing in Jerusalem, which they renamed Aelia Capitolina. The Jewish people did not take too kindly to Roman theaters, etc., being built in this renamed Roman city, or what they tried to make it a Roman city.
Exactly. And so basically what we have here may be another one of these indications of the Roman legion building buildings and then having to leave it behind to deal with the revolt. Of course, the Romans succeed in putting down the revolt, but for some reason they don't return to this building. Why that is, we don't know. And again, we're still examining whether that's the exact historic instance that this stops being carved out.
Yeah. What a discovery, what a find. Joe, thanks so much for having us with you here today beneath the Western Wall in the tunnels beneath the Temple Mount. Joe, thanks a lot. It was great.
Thank you very much.
Thank